Having a bit of technical difficulties on that one, but hopefully this will record on the first go. Anyway, this is The Blessed, chapter number 3. Now, before I get started on this one is of a little bit particular interest. Is the fact that this one wasn't actually originally written by me. This is the only chapter in the first book, and so far the only chapter in all of the chapters that have been written that was not originally written by me. When the book was originally getting written, I wasn't all that engaged with it, to be honest. I didn't get engaged until, I think, seriously around chapter 10, where I really started putting some serious effort and thought into the overall story, but up until that point, it was more of a side project between friends. And so I was hoping to sort of pass the buck on getting someone else to actually do a little bit of the work. The problem was that the second chapter, this is basically a retelling of the second chapter from a different character's perspective, which I was hoping would set up a couple of different points throughout the course of the stories, that the perspective would change depending from chapter to chapter on occasionally. And mostly would follow this character, Darius, as basically the secondary main protagonist. There was quite a few little problems, though, with the consistency of the second chapter and the third chapter when originally creating this, and I eventually basically went through and had to rewrite the third chapter on occasions. That was sort of one of the things that I was always seriously worried about, was the consistency between chapters like this, and it's the only chapter that actually does this, where it takes place during the exact same event of another chapter right next to it. I think it's the only time I've ever actually did this, and the second book's even bigger than the first book. So it's an interesting chapter in that department, and me being at least attempting to be a little creative. So, without further ado, here's chapter 3. Darius looked at the coals as he rubbed his beard, going over the past events. He opened up a bottle of brandy. The two kids he picked up were resting peacefully near the fire. The sun was starting to rise as he stared at the warm sun slowly coming back up with a warm... I think I should have done something besides use warm repeatedly. Green color. He raised his bottle as his mind returned to yesterday. Why am I even doing this? Darius grumbled as he strode towards the town. Although only 24, he appeared older due to his full beard and long hair that hung past his neck. Darius continued to grumble as he dreaded his talk with the sheriff. Darius, can you fetch this? Darius, can you take out these bandits? I'll pay you this time. Honest! Darius mumbled sarcastically as he walked past a couple of buildings. For 3 years he'd been wandering the wastes, and for 3 years he's found himself playing Good Samaritan despite his better judgment. So far, Snake had been his only ally in information. He and the recent string of attacks in the area, Tom the local sheriff, along with the small legions of lawmen of the Deadlands, had formed, agreed to help him if he acted as muscle. Frustratingly, between the two, the men had been hightailing it around the man had been hightailing it around the Deadlands, one step behind his targets. Only able to, at best, help with evacuation, even if he was ahead of the group. It wasn't that he didn't like helping people; it was that it was always things they should be doing for themselves. Was it that hard was it that hard to have a standing police force? A farm? How about some damn compassion for each other? But always somewhere in the back of his mind, Darius knew why. How could anyone hope and desire for more in a place like this? A place where the law was powerless and the weak suffered under the strong. They were all dead people. Deadlands, and Darius would be too if he couldn't get any leads on his query of 3 years. Ooh, query. Now there's a nice word for you. Ooh, I'm really stretching muscles of the Arthurian author tongue, I suppose. Arthurian sounds too much like an old Dutch. Digressing. Back to the book. 3 years ago, Darius was a soldier for the Military Remnant Forces, the MRF, or MRF, as people called them. was all that remained of one of the old empires in the times before, when Kami appeared 100 years ago. A good portion of the military joined him. The military remnant forces joined the religious figure along with the angels. Its symbol was a pit with a snake hovering above it, which the scholar said represented its desire to take the snakes of the world and put them in pits to protect the innocent from harm. All hogwash and rot as far as Darius was concerned, as if anybody really knew. But as a kid, he believed it. Darius had grown up in the Murph's shielded base of Fort Dallas on the western continent. It was a place where the healthy and powerful lived, and where everybody else wished they could live. In Dallas Fort, the military was life, and as soon as you were tall enough to drive a vehicle and not crap your pants, you were drafted into the Children's Corps, where you were honed into proud bearers of the MRF. At least that's what it was supposed to be. They mostly stayed in one of several bases on the continent, or made small excursions to keep surrounding villages in lines and safe from those who would threaten the growing city of Eden. Truth was that much as they desired to rebuild the world, they were also afraid of it, afraid of the residual, and afraid of losing what they already had. For Darius, it was no different. He only touched the outside world once during a skirmish against rebels, and he became one of the blessed. But to him, it was more of a curse. A curse that started with whispers that became words, and eventually he realized he could tap into people's thoughts and memories. More than that, he could also move things with his mind, which would be a blessing. He soon heard rumors of people like him being taken away. Feeling very frightened and very much alone, he suppressed his powers as much as he could, but he could not change his effectiveness in the field. He was good. Very good, and people knew it. He was a legend rising up in the world. By the age of 20, he was leading a squad of older men, mostly older than himself. On a mission most men would freak at, and he relished it. But times changed, and mistakes were made. Darius lost control of his powers and nearly killed a man. The man was a superior who had been doing some nasty things, but Darius was too well known to simply disappear. The Council of Generals, the MRF's men upstairs, blamed him for the superior's death and gave him two choices, either the chair or to bring in some escaped criminals who supposedly stole a shipment of equipment and fled to the western continent. He chose pursuit. But after 4 years of almost nothing of his quarry, he had more or less turned into mercenary work, a job that led him to what was left of the Middle East, and the town he had been servicing for the last couple of months. The town, though of decent size, was mostly poor, and few being able to afford even decent wood to make their buildings with. The streets were mostly just earth, and occasionally wood bridge leading over large cracks in the earth no one bothered to fill in. When he had first arrived, he had reached out with his mind to get a feel for the population, who eyed him from windows curiously. The people who he could feel were mostly dead inside due to the harsh conditions and the harsh truth that most had no real future. It sickened Darius that people could let themselves get like this. It sickened him that the people could give up on making a better future just because they thought they would never get beyond their status, and to think that they were his customers. And although even though they warmed up to him, he never let his guard down, because the Deadlands is not a place for dreamers. No place for dreamers. I could have been a little bit more poetic with that one. Darius walked over a wood path and passed a couple of shops before something caught his eye. Looking to his right, Darius noted a pair of teens hanging around outside a building. One teen was a boy with black, shaggy hair, baggy brown pants, and a black shirt, who looked no less than 18. The older was a girl with dark hair and a brown vest over a white t-shirt and matching pants, who seemed about the same age. They didn't feel like the others. Naive fools, enjoy your positivity. Well, you can. Before time beats it out of you, thought Darius. Cynical bastard, isn't he? Darius turned his attention back to the sheriff, who waited outside of his office. The sheriff, a man of his late 30s and dressed in a simple shirt, overalls, and work boots, came over and shook Darius's hand. The sheriff was one of the few people Darius could call a friend, and had connections with the MRF and the new Roman Empire that dominated Rome and parts of southern Europe. It was these connections that usually employed Darius's more unique talents. Darius returned the handshake and followed the sheriff into his office. Sheriff's office was sparsely adorned with a simple desk, weapon cabinet, filing cabinet, and a couple of chairs. Nearby there were doors that led to several jail cells. Darius studied the weapon rack and waited for the sheriff to take his seat. "So, what do you have for me, Sheriff?" said Darius as he turned his gaze on the man. That's actually Sheriff there, but I figured I used Sheriff enough times, so... That's humor. My brother. Back to the book. Stop being so condescending and stop smiling at me. Fiance. Women. Nothing good. My contacts tell me the bandits, quotations, bandits, sarcasm, are planning to sack the village. Even so, what do you expect me to do? I'm not invincible, said Darius. The sheriff nodded in agreement. I know that. An attack is not my plan. My plan is evacuation, and you're the key. See, I know you're one of the blessed. Don't give me that look, kid. Nobody looks as good as you do unless they're just born lucky or blessed. And knowing you don't have much luck, said the sheriff as he leaned back in his chair. I prefer to keep that on the down low, said Darius, considering wiping the sheriff's mind and leaving, but thought better of it. And that mumbo jumbo do you think I have? I'll be straight with you. I'm close with the MRF recon in these parts. They told me about you, how you are secretly blessed with the power to read minds, and how you are tasked with the impossible, taking out bandit leadership in these parts. That's why I believe you can do this job. Darius looked at the sheriff sternly and said, Great, they did know about my power. That might explain why they sent me out here. Darius mused as he played with his beard. And I'm going to be clean with you. I didn't set up shop here to play hero. Jobs like this you pay up front. I know. I got your payment here, I said, walking over to the weapon cabinet. Sheriff reached into the cabinet and opened a secret compartment. Inside the compartment, there was a small diamond and a handgun with ammo. The sheriff took everything from the secret compartment and put it on the desk in front of Darius, who probably took the diamond and examined it. This will do nicely, but you can keep the gun. I have my own, said Darius as he pocketed the rare gem. Suit yourself now. On to business. We both know that simply asking people to flee won't work and would draw attention. That's where you come in. Use your power to encourage people to leave. Darius thought for a moment before answering. Sound plan, but I'll need a place to hunker down and concentrate. Also, need a beer. Is Wiley's Cantina still open? Sure. Is there anything else? Where are they camped? The slums on the eastern side, as Jareth said sadly. I hear you. They'll be first to fall in How. But we can't worry about that now. He said as he stood up and moved to the door. The sheriff followed Darius and said, I wish you luck, son, and I hope we both survive to see each other again. The sheriff shook Darius's hand as he opened the door. Take care of yourself and stay out of trouble, said Darius as he stepped out into the warm air. Darius considered the job before him and decided to head to the local bar, Willie's Cantina. Willie's, there we are, Darius said as he walked into the cantina, which looked like a saloon Darius once saw in history class long ago. The place had two levels, a main one filled with tables and chairs at the bar itself, and the second level that was used as an inn. Darius walked to the bar and took a seat. Darius ignored the stares from the drunkards inside as he ordered a drink. Now comes the fun part, thought Darius, as he began to concentrate on the area of the town farthest away from the bandit camp. He could feel the minds of the people and took a swig of beer, to keep his cool. Although more well off than those on the other side of town, the people were still just as empty inside. Darius decided to work with that and began filling the people with fire and an urgent need to find a better town and to hurry. Darius could feel the gear shifting in their heads as they gathered family and belongings in their arms or carts, if they had one, and began to leave. As he was doing this, Darius continued to drink his beer and shout down calming feelings to those he hadn't gotten to yet. After a few hours, he had gotten almost a quarter of the town to safety, and it was then that Darius began to feel a bit woozy. He asked the bartender for a room, and he was directed up to the upper floor to a shabby room towards the back. The room had only a bed, a chair, and a table with a lamp on it. Darius tossed his coat and sword on the chair and lay on the bed. Closing his eyes, Darius began focusing again and continued until nightfall, when he was promptly awoken by the noise coming from the street. Guess he meditated a little too hard and... He looked out of the window and saw soldiers in black armor gathering people into the center of town. Darius cracked the window carefully to hear what was going on and saw a giant of a man in black armor step into view. The giant wore a large hammer on his back, and two smaller ones hung from his waist. In one hand, the giant held a Gatling gun. The giant was apparently the leader and was flanked by a small man that seemed a little familiar. A bush, Darius muttered as he looked out at the man, grabbing his katana and his pistol. Darius listened to the giant, demanding that they hand over a certain man. Soon realized that he was being described and quickly turned from the window. Darius saw soldiers dragging a couple into view. He recognized the man as Willie, the owner of the bar. He began to get nervous as Willie and his wife were asked for his location. Willie was hesitant, but after looking at his wife, said no. Willie looked up at the window where he had returned to. The two eyes met as the man mouthed, "Go to him." The giant aimed his weapon at the woman and repeated his question. Willie again said that he knew nothing and watched his wife being torn apart by the Gatling rounds. The giant sneered. "You can go," Mabush urged as he lowered his weapon. Willie, kneeling by his wife and hearing the giant's words, lunged at him in rage, but he too was cut down. "Pity," the giant said. "He could have lived." "He was already dead. Let this be a lesson to anyone who stands in our way. Give us what we're looking for and we'll leave," said the one that looked more like a puppet than a human. Siler, shit, that's why, muttered Darius as he walked away from the window, realizing the man's warning. Mabush the giant, Aline Hardley, a former hunter, and Siler, Siler. His powers were much like my own, only stronger. Oh, that was actually supposed to be them talking, but I have no indication outside of the quotation marks that he was in fact talking. And Darius, you need to work on talking to yourself. It's kind of distracting. Darius felt like falling to his knees just then, but decided to take advantage of his savior's kindness and ran from the room, but was stopped by one of the inn workers who whispered, "Willie sent me to show you the way out. It's the least he could do for all you've done." Darius felt he would cry at this point, but now wasn't the time. Darius was led to the storage room in the back of the cantina and ushered out the back door into an alleyway. Darius turned to the person who led him outside and said, "I'm going to cause a distraction. You get yourself and everyone to safety, and thank you." Then ran to the edge of the alleyway before the cantina and yanked a soldier back into the alley with him. "As long as Siler is around, I can't make a mess, but running away will just get me spotted," Darius muttered. The few townspeople that were left were being rounded up. "Let's see, anyone blessed or at least have all their body parts in one piece?" asked Siler. The man walked around the group. His body seemed to stumble even in the signature armor of the angels. The man raised his hand and a small group of people were pulled out. The military truck soon drove in as the small group of people was pushed onto the truck. Siler got on last. "You know what to do with the rest. Darius is here as well. I hope you find him." "Coward," Mabush called back. "You could kill him easily, so why are you running away? Mass murder is your job. Mine is to complete the mission," said the man, so devoid of emotion that it seemed more like a robot. The fake angels quickly piled in and drove off as the small group stayed behind. Silver armor suddenly shifted as the butt of a gun formed from the armor, each grabbing it and pulling a silver version of an AK-47. Darius acted using a quick blast of his telekinetic abilities. The crowd was shoved away as he pulled out his pistol. The soldiers returned fire while Darius continued to back down. The gap between the bar and the general store. Darius rested his hands against a wood wall as he mentally reached out with his mind and tapped into their conversations. The giant was communicating to an entire military presence in the city. City? Oh, blasted. It's not supposed to be a city. It's not that big. Solitaire again? Really? Are you that bored?
Updates on the
computer. The giant was communicating to the entire military presence in the town. He spoke up. Alpha as the target. I'm linking up with them. The rest of you are to light this city up. Create a wall of flame as a cage for this moron. Anyone gets in your way, kill them. But for the bastards would pay in time. But for right now, Darius had to survive. Darius darted out from the small alley and continued to fire as he ran backwards. Bullets couldn't touch him as he concentrated, putting up a small barrier. One bullet found its mark, piercing the black visor. The group suddenly reached behind themselves, touching a small cylinder, and soon blue energy fields appeared around each one. The weapons soon reabsorbed into the armor, and he drew out a sword and started walking towards them. Darius holstered his weapon as he went for his katana. Mabush drew his warhammer, and he looked around and found a young woman who was trying to crawl behind a wagon. "Hello there. How did you avoid getting found?" The question went unanswered as his attention returned to his attackers. Darius drew his blade when he noticed the smoke rising in and around the town. Darius backed away, hoping to lead the group away from the girl. Mabush charged at him, swinging wildly at his hammer. Darius rolled as his weapon created a small crater where Darius was standing. The other soldier quickly charged. Darius used his power to block some blows and strengthen his own, slicing one of the armored men in half. The rest started to circle around him. Darius summoned up his powers and blasted everything around him away in a mass surge of power. Everyone but Bush was thrown away as the town started to glow orange around them. "Bastard, stand still!" shouted the giant under his helm as the bearded man ducked again. "Above average military armor, below average human intelligence," muttered the man. "Just my luck." The bearded man continued to work as he leaped above a second swing and fired another round as he flew over, using the force to get free of the giant's reach. The girl seemed to be nursing a wound from the blast as the town wasn't completely on fire. Soon the girl's friend arrived. Ignoring the fact that he had a sword, the boy's emotions were going from one extreme to the next. "Keep back. This man is far too dangerous. I'll deal with him. You handle the followers," ordered Darius as he drew his blade and then his .45 caliber handgun from under his coat. The man swung his hammer around. Darius leaped onto the pull of the hammer. Darius slammed his knee into the giant's helmet. The giant stumbled back as he growled in frustration. Darius then shot at the giant's head. The iron wasn't even scratched. Darius only growled in annoyance as he landed behind the giant. The giant picked up his hammer back over his shoulder, and his fist became spiked. The giant charged forward, his fist growing spikes aimed at Darius's head. In one motion, Darius grabbed the giant's hands and flung him into the air. Darius then leaped up after his opponent and unloaded a round of bullets at the giant, who slammed into the earth, creating a small crater. He roared as Darius standing up as he took two smaller hammers in charge. Darius dove under them and slammed his fist in the giant's armor. The giant's helmet shifted back as he spit up blood, glaring at the smaller man. The giant noticed Dayan and Alicia attempting to run past him and grinned. He doesn't know their names yet. They're supposed to mention their names. Oh, man. Editor, please! Noticed the boy and girl attempting to run past him and grinned. The giant tossed the two into a tower as Darius reached out to catch them. Alicia screamed in fear as the flames started to drop around them. "Look out!" yelled the boy. Darius turned to see a building falling at him. The giant pointed at Darius and gave a quick motion with his hand across his own neck and attempted to run as one of the other buildings collapsed, blocking any attempts to follow. Darius dozed as the memories went over in his mind, and then he heard one of the teens get up. Looking to one side, Darius stored his drink as he became aware of where he was. It was then he felt someone watching them and used telepathy to draw attention from himself as he got up and slid behind the figure, now standing in the camp. Pulling the sword from its sheath, Darius rose and brought the sword to the throat of whom he had not recognized as an older woman, as he now recognized. "Hello, Lieutenant Darius Henson," she said, smiling as the boy looked at him in shock. "What the heck is going on here?" said the boy. Well, not exactly a very long chapter, but as you can see, I continue to be plagued with little problems and stuff like that. But overall, I have to thank Nathan for actually writing this chapter for me, even though I did do some serious editing to it in order to actually get it to flow much more properly with the fourth chapter. I think I did get a little bit lazy when actually rewriting this one, even though I felt it was necessary to bring in some dialogue, background information, and stuff like that, as well as basically setting up the actual style early on in the book, that other characters would get different perspectives throughout the story, even though we'd be focusing mainly on Dayan. Which was kind of the whole point of the actual chapter to begin with, as well as me trying to, get out of doing a little bit of work for him. Like I said, this was early in the conception of the original story, and while I did go back and edit it to get it more in tune with the actual story, like I said, it's kind of it's necessary, but at the same time I feel it's kind of lazy. Anyway, that's it for Chapter 3, and I'll hopefully have Chapter 4 up soon enough.